Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Tales of Herding Gods based on novel. So let's start. In regards to divine eyes, Qin Mu had seen much and was familiar with their structure. He had learned Blind's 9 Heavens Eyes Awakening skill and even forged Sunshot Divine Cannon as well as obtained Sun Jade Eye and Moon Jade Eye. No matter how complicated was the interior structure of the sun Ziqing had forged, it had many surface changes, but no departure from the original standard. When others saw such a complicated structure, they would usually be unable to find a solution. However, he was able to quickly find all the crucial points in all kinds of formations. Ziqing had forged the sun not to use it as a weapon. Instead, it was used for lighting up the surroundings, so her formations had no power and were not dangerous. He could try them out without any worry. On top of that, Ziqing also left behind a mechanism to put away the sun. When it was activated, the sun would change into a metal wall. Because the sun had been smashed into half by Qin Mu, it had become 2 metal walls. Numerous sun herders suppressed the shock in their hearts and pulled out the chains. Without a hook, how can we fish out another sun out from Sun Well? Everyone looked at Qin Mu with hope. The old chief immediately shook his head. His Highness's cultivation is not high enough. He can't go deep into Sun Well and bring up a sun. The temperature in Sun Well was extremely high, to the point that anything that the sun herders forged would melt after being lowered inside. It would be even worse for Qin Mu, who was only a divine arts practitioner of 6 Directions realm. Qin Mu smiled and said, "Chief, have you forgotten? After becoming the Sun Guardian, I can control the energy of Sunship, so won't I have the magic power of a heavenly god that way? As long as I can fish the sun out, I will be able to break free and won't need to fear being swallowed up by Sunship." "What if you can't bring one up?" the old chief said with hesitation. "There's no what if. Since I was the one to smash your sun, I have to be the one to get another one." Qin Mu made a prompt decision and stretched his hand out to grab onto a pillar. As his body expanded, he remembered something and transmitted his voice to the old chief. "Chief, help me prepare a set of clothes. My spare clothes are all used up." The old chief didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Every time Qin Mu transformed into the Sun Guardian, he would rip apart his clothes and have to change to a spare set. The clothes in his reserves had all been used up. He was wearing the last set. After fishing out the sun, if he didn't have new clothes, his buttocks would definitely be bare. That was because the complete form of the Sun Guardian had a 3rd leg growing out from the buttocks which would rip the pants. "Fetch our heavenly young golden silk, weave it into fabric to make a set of clothes for His Highness." After saying that, the old chief suddenly recalled something and hurriedly added, "Invite Chief Yu of Heavenly Feather Clan. Let her tailor the fabric for His Highness and make sure they are fitting and dignified." A few sun herders immediately left to carry out the task. Qin Mu controlled Sunship and its 12 legs took wide strides toward Sun Well. Sunship had no sun, so it was started to absorb his life force, causing his body to slowly sink deeper and deeper into the deck. He was gradually fusing with the ship. The speed of exhaustion was many times faster when compared to the time when the sun was just extinguished. He had to fish out a sun as soon as possible. If the time was dragged out, it would become more and more dangerous. Beside Sun Well, Qin Mu's violent magic power swept up the chains inside. They were like black dragons that slithered forward into the core of another galaxy. That place was no other than Sun Well, a circular abyss that had countless suns that were like balls of light. In the meantime, outside the well, stars were shining. They were of all forms and colors as they formed the Milky Way, which was revolving around the 2 wells, circulating continuously. Even though the chains of Sunship were thick, they were like a few thin strings when compared to Sun Well, so the sight was indeed like they were fishing. Qin Mu, who was at top of the well, looked like a real fisherman. The chains went into Sun Well and Qin Mu's palms trembled. He frowned slightly. The chains had gone as far as they could, but they still didn't reach the suns. "Chief, order everyone to leave the ship." Qin Mu shouted loudly. Sun Herd Chief immediately passed down his words, and everyone on the ship flew up in a hurry. Right after, they saw Sun Ship opening up its 12 legs and walking into the light pillar of Sun Well. The huge ship slanted forward and walked into the well. In the center of the 4 pillars, Qin Mu's giant body, which was like that of a heavenly god, was shaking from the somewhat bumpy ride. He had the incomparably huge ship enter the Star Sea. "Your Highness, Sun Ship has already swallowed your thighs," the old chief shouted out. "Don't stay too long or you will be swallowed by Sun Ship." In Constellation C, a huge ship was walking straight down the light pillar. At its bow, there was a giant holding onto the chains to get to the abyss below. Around him were stars of different colors swirling continuously. In the abyss, the huge suns radiated with dazzling rays which made it hard to open one's eyes. Qin Mu's face and chest were turning red from the scorching heat as though he was going to melt. 9 Heaven's Eyes awakening skill had already been activated so he could withstand the intense rays to look at everything in the well. Sun Ship was closing to the abyss while growing red hot, but luckily, it had been forged by ancient gods so it wasn't smelted that easily. Finally, Qin Mu saw the chains touch one of the suns. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. At that moment, he noticed that Sun Ship had already swallowed his waist. Crap! Without the sun as an energy source, the absorbing speed is way too fast. Qin Mu composed himself and gritted his teeth. With the 4 chains as his hands, he gently touched the surface of the sun and found where the mechanism located. His body was sinking bit by bit into the ship, and soon, the ship went past his waist. Without the sun, utilizing the energy of Sun Ship would cause him to suffer from the drawback. The speed of it surpassed Qin Mu's expectation. It's not this formation marking. Not this as well. Even if he had activated the 9 heavens in his eyes, he still couldn't make out the markings on the surface of the sun. He could only rely on the 4 chains to touch and differentiate them. The 4 chains were like 4 huge dragons that were moving slowly. His magic power leaked out from them to form vital chi threads which he used to differentiate the structure of the markings on the sun's surface. It's not this either. His body had already been swallowed to the neck, yet Qin Mu still hadn't found the location of the mechanism. Cold sweat formed on his forehead, but before it could even flow out from his pores, it evaporated. It then turned into hot air that floated around him. Sun Ship swallowed Qin Mu up to the neck, and he raised his head so his mouth would stay outside. He tried his best to mobilize Sun Ship so its deck would face Sun Well. Qin Mu's eyes stared fiercely at it while his body kept on sinking downwards, covering his mouth. His nose was about to be covered up too. In the end, even his eyes were close to sinking into Sun Ship. His nose bridge was gradually covered. The instant his eyes was about to be gone too, he saw an eye in the sun. Qin Mu was slightly stunned. Zi Qing's divine eye? That eye was as dazzling as a sun, and it seemed to be staring back at him. It gave Qin Mu a kind of strange feeling. When watched by that eye, he instantly felt layers of formations appear in his eyes. That feeling didn't last long, for Sun Ship had drowned out his eyes. Found it! Qin Mu's consciousness trembled, and he felt an abnormal touch coming from his own vital chi. He immediately gathered all his magic power, and the majestic vital chi flooded down the 4 chains to rush at the mechanism on the surface of the sun. He could only hear cranking sounds as the formation on the sun's surface was activated. The 4 chains pierced through, led by the formation. In Sun Ship, Qin Mu instantly felt the boundless strength coming from the sun flooding over. At that moment, Sun Ship had completely swallowed him up, to the point that only his nose tip could be seen. Whoosh! The 4 chains pulled a sun out from the well, and it floated up into the sky, pulling the chains taut. Outside Sun Well, the old chief looked at the light pillar nervously. Too much time has passed, too much. His Highness might not have been able to endure. Any later, he won't be able to escape from Sun Ship. Suddenly, light burst forth in Sun Well, and a sun slowly rose from the light pillar. Everyone was forced to move back as heat waves swept past them in all directions. Afterward, Sun Ship's huge body came out from the well with its 12 legs slowly landing on the ground. Thump! The body of the ship descended, and the land shook, causing lava to flow into numerous canals. Sun Ship was pretty stable. The old chief hurriedly flew up and barged to the center of the 4 pillars. He saw Qin Mu lying there naked, unmoving. Too much of his life force had been taken by Sun's ship. Even though he captured a sun and was saved, his life force couldn't be recovered. Move away, all move away. Hu Linga sprinted over, her feet getting scalded by the scorching ground until green smoke came out. I have medicine here. The old chief and the rest opened up a path, and Hu Linga flew to Qin Mu. She didn't care that her feet were blistering from the heat. In a hurry, she stuffed the spirit pills that Qin Mu had made for Yang Jingjing into his mouth. She used her vital qi to guide them into his abdomen and catalyzed the medicinal energy. When it was finished, Qin Mu slowly woke up, feeling that his body was extremely weak. He didn't even have the energy to open his eyes and could only gasp for breath. Hu Linga let out a sigh of relief and only then felt her feet hurting. She immediately jumped onto the old chief's head, her eyes tearing up from the pain. The old chief hurriedly raised Qin Mu while shouting, "Quickly, to the lake!" After a moment, on the small island at the center of Sun's ship, Qin Mu was placed in a hot spring that was at the heart of the island. Beside him was a frail little girl also soaking in the water. "Little brother who herds cows." The frail girl smiled weakly. Hu Linga sat on the old chief's head, not daring to let her feet touch the ground, so she requested boldly and confidently to soak in the hot spring as well. "My feet are also injured." The old chief was helpless and could only place her in the hot spring. "Little ancestor, this hot spring is not normal water, but condensed from the qi of pure yang. You can soak in it, but you can't piss in it. Bah, only you will piss inside." Hu Linga sat down excitedly and felt waves of energy from the water flooding her body to nourish her limbs and bones. Her divine treasures, spirit embryo, souls, and spirits felt comfortable, without any being an exception. She looked at the frail girl beside and said in delight, "Sister Jing of Yang family, so you're here. Young master, why aren't you opening your eyes? That's right, when you were sprawled there earlier, your butt was seen by all." Qin Mu gradually opened his eyes, and white light blinded the 2 girls. It was like countless suns had burst forth with intense brightness, making their eyes tear from the sting. Qin Mu closed his eyes, and after a moment, Hu Linga and Yang Jingjing slowly recovered. In Sun Well, I saw Zi Qing's divine eye. Qin Mu didn't dare to open his eyes again. After that, many things appeared in my eyes. It was like her eyes had imprinted something in mine. "Can you see anything now?" Yang Jingjing asked with nervousness. "I can." Yang Jingjing's eyes had been treated by Qin Mu and were more and less healed. She could see, but her body was still somewhat frail. She immediately came to Qin Mu's side and pressed down on his shoulders while saying softly, "We, the Sun Herd tribe, also have a technique to cultivate our eyes. It's called Pleiades Sun Star Hoops. Wait for me to execute it before opening your eyes so I can help you take a look." Qin Mu waited for a moment, then Yang Jingjing said, "Done." He opened his eyes, and the divine light in them burst forth, washing the surroundings in snow-white light. He then took note of the frail girl moving to the front of his face and looking at his pupils seriously. Her eyes seemed to have star hoops that shrouded her pupils. The star hoops were circulating continuously and withstanding the power of his divine eyes. Yang Jingjing examined him in detail and moved to the front of his eyes to differentiate the markings. Qin Mu didn't dare to breathe as he was afraid of blowing his breath on her face. It's a kind of rune marking that has resulted in a formation. Yang Jingjing breathed out, and he smelled orchids and iris as she pondered while examining his eyes. The outer layer looks like Pleiades sun star hoops of our Sun Herd tribe, but there are other markings in the inner layers. There are a total of 2, 3, 4 layers. She inspected Qin Mu's pupils carefully and saw the layers of space inside. The runes formed a strange structure that was like layers of sun hoops that stretched back continuously. She couldn't see clearly how many of them there were. Inside your eye, in the centermost area of the layers of Pleiades sun star hoops, there seems to be a sun. It could also be formed by the star hoops. She finished her examination and said, "I shall teach you Pleiades sun star hoops, my pupil divine art. Try and see if you can control the markings in your eyes with it." Qin Mu nodded with difficulty. Only then did Yang Jingjing notice that her face was so close to his that they almost came into contact. Qin Mu didn't dare to nod because he was afraid of hitting her. Their gazes met, and the stars' hoops in their eyes flashed with brilliant rays. However, at that moment, Hu Ling, a voice sounded out. "Young master, is the examination done yet? Why is there no sound now?" Qin Mu immediately said, "Still not done yet?" Yang Jingjing burst into laughter and her breath assaulted him in the face. Hu Ling heard it and was slightly suspicious. With her arms and legs, she splashed around in the water to swim over with her tails floating on the surface. Qin Mu's gaze was too bright, so she couldn't see him. However, she could head toward the sound and stop between the two of them. Half of her body popped out of the water, and she shook her tails, flinging water on the face of the boy and the girl. Qin Mu and Yang Jingjing immediately split apart and suppressed the stray thoughts in their hearts. Qin Mu closed his eyes. Hu Ling sat in the center, separating them. Yang Jingjing immediately said, "I shall teach you Pleiades sun-star hoops, so listen carefully." She then explained it to him. Qin Mu asked whenever he was in doubt and soon mastered Pleiades sun-star hoops. He tried to execute it, and the layers of star hoops in his pupils extinguished one after another. However, there were still some runes that were swimming in his pupils. He opened his eyes, and there was no longer any more astonishing rays shooting out. However, in the depths of his pupils, there would be a ray of light flashing from time to time. Pleiades sun-star hoops didn't close the sun markings that were in the core. Yang Jingjing swam over from the side and examined his pupils before pondering for a moment. Pleiades sun-star hoops should be part of that divine eyes technique. It isn't complete, so the sun markings couldn't be completely closed. Hu Ling went to Qin Mu's side and examined his right eye as though she knew what she was doing. "Young master, there are stars in your eyes." Qin Mu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "That's Pleiades sun-star hoops. Sister Jing and I are currently discussing them, so don't create trouble." "Sister Jing, the imprints in God Si Ching's eyes were mirrored in mine, so we might just be able to master her divine eyes from them." Her divine eyes were definitely the #1 divine eyes in founding emperor era. If we could master them, it will be extraordinary. Yang Jingjing pondered over it and said, "It's impossible to master the #1 divine eyes just from the imprints alone. Even though I've learned Pleiades sun-star hoops, I can't rely on it to deduce the technique of the #1 divine eyes. It's simply too difficult. Someone can do it." Qin Mu's eyes lit up as he was filled with confidence. "Grandpa blind from my family, he could definitely restore God Si Ching's technique just from these imprints." "Grandpa blind?" Yang Jingjing asked curiously. "Isn't he someone whose eyes can't see anymore?" Qin Mu was fully confident in blind's abilities. Even though he's blind, his eyesight is very good. He's the person with the highest attainments in divine eyes that I've met. Yang Jingjing was even more bewildered. Puzzled, she asked, "He's blind, so how can his eyesight be very good?" "Grandpa blind has the best eyesight. Grandpa mute doesn't have many words, but he scolds people fiercely. Grandpa cripple runs the fastest. One-armed old Ma has the best fist skills. Grandpa butcher, who only has half a body, is the fiercest in fights, and even though Grandpa deaf can't hear, is the best in understanding others." Qin Mu smiled. "There's also the most beautiful Granny Sai, the cutest grandpa apothecary who's #1 in both curing and poisoning others. However, the most powerful of them all is still village chief, who has no arms or legs. His sword skills are the best in this world." Yang Jingjing was at a loss, then she said with excitement, "I want to go out and take a look. When your sickness is cured, I'll bring you out." Qin Mu said, "It's almost New Year's, I reckon we'll be eating at Granny's house this time. Do you want to go together?" "Sure." Yang Jingjing was indescribably excited, but her face turned dull soon. She shook her head and said, "I need to stay in the tribe. There can't be no one looking after Sunship. If the devils come again." Qin Mu smiled and said, "It's fine, I have caught a new sun and killed body replicator devil god, so there shouldn't be any enemy attacks for a little while. I'll send you back after New Year's." Yang Jingjing was delighted yet nervous. "I have never left my tribesmen and went out alone before. With me around, you can be at ease. Hu Linga couldn't join in the conversation, so she could only grumble in her heart. After a moment, some women of the Sun Herders walked over and placed down a stack of clothes while saying respectfully, "Your Highness, the new clothes are done." Qin Mu stood up and suddenly felt a chill on his buttocks. He hurriedly sat back down and said, "Linga, Sister Jing, turn around, I would like to change my clothes." Yang Jingjing and Hu Linga listened and turned around, so he immediately climbed out of the pool. Hu Linga turned her head to peep, but Yang Jingjing immediately said, "Don't peep." "I was seeing if young master had any tails," she whispered back. "Did you see any tails?" Yang Jingjing asked with curiosity. "Nope, his butt was bare." Hu Linga's voice held disappointment. Qin Mu donned the clothes and saw that they were cerulean blue in color. The overlap of the gown was embroidered with the markings of sun and moon, while the hemline was embroidered with the markings of dragons and phoenixes. The style and tailoring were very fitting. It had certain points that looked luxurious, but not too eye-catching. It was simple, elegant, and reserved. "These clothes aren't bad." Qin Mu was astonished at how comfortable he felt. When he tried to execute 9 Dragons Monarch technique and his muscles expanded like dragons, his clothes also grew. They were still very fitting. Truly well made. Qin Mu was surprised and delighted. He could feel the vital qi surging through his body, moving along with the clothes as well as though they were his skin. On top of that, the clothes could automatically adjust to any changes. "It's the work of Heavenly Feather Clan." Qin Mu smiled and said, "If Heavenly Feather Clan reaches eternal peace, they'll be able to survive by relying on their handicraft in tailoring." He jumped back into the pool to soak. Even though the clothes entered the water, they didn't get wet. When he left the water, they were still dry. This made Qin Mu click his tongue in wonder. The pool water was condensed from the qi of pure yang, and by soaking inside, it could replenish exhausted life force. Yang Jingjing was the body of pure yang, so it had the most effect on her. Qin Mu could also absorb the qi of pure yang in the pool water by executing Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique. Not only did he feel his life force recovering continuously, his cultivation was also rising. His vital qi was becoming purer as well. The two of them soaked in the water for several days, and their bodies mostly recovered. Hu Linga's injuries were long gone, but she had still stuck around, not wanting to leave, so Qin Mu used that time to teach her divine arts, paths, and skills, as well as how to use a sword. He also exchanged pointers with Yang Jingjing in regards to the knowledge on divine eyes, so the couple days passed in no time. Even though Yang Jingjing's life force had recovered, she was still very frail. When she stretched her arm out, her skin clung to her bones in a pity-attracting manner. Sunship had absorbed her corporeal body for far too long for her to recover in a short while. Qin Mu carried Hu Linga out from the water while Yang Jingjing climbed out herself. "Chief most likely won't be willing to let me leave. I've never been away from Sunship before," she said with some hesitation. "In that case, let's not tell him. We shall sneak away." Qin Mu smiled. Yang Jingjing was so excited that her face flushed red. Her fingers curled into tight fists. Wouldn't this be not good? Qin Mu had them wait nearby while he went to find Sun Herder Chief and Yu Jiaoqing. Yu Jiaoqing had already settled the discussion with her clansmen and decided to temporarily go to Eternal Peace Empire and settle down there. They were just waiting for Qin Mu's order. He brought Cai Yunxiang, Ling Yuxiu, and called the dragon Chelin and the flood dragons that were playing around in the lake back. He bade farewell to Sun Herder Chief while Hu Linga brought Yang Jingjing to mix among people of Heavenly Feather Clan. Sun Herder Chief led everyone to see them off, then said, "Your Highness, Sun Guardian's body isn't well, so may Your Highness look after her well." Qin Mu was stunned. The old chief waved his hand and saw them off. When they were far from Sun Well, Yang Jingjing came to Qin Mu's side and said excitedly, "Chief didn't notice me." Qin Mu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "How could that old fox not notice you?" Ling Yuxiu was shocked and cried out, "The one who herds cows, you kidnapped Sun Guardian? How daring of you!" Cai Yunxiang sneered and said, "He even kidnapped the princess of Eternal Peace Empire." She then looked around at the majestic sight of millions of beautiful people of Heavenly Feather Clan following Qin Mu to Eternal Peace Empire and muttered, "Cult Master even kidnapped Heavenly Feather Clan, as well as over a dozen flood dragons. He indeed has the natural qualities of being Heavenly Devil Cult Master." Patriarch's judgment was right. If it was me, I wouldn't have been able to kidnap so many followers. As for Li Qianqing, he isn't even worthy to wipe his ass. On the way back, Qin Mu first returned to disabled elderly village and discovered that it was the world of hen dragons. They clucked noisily and looked fiendish as though they were about to wage a war with the millions of Heavenly Feather clansmen. Qin Mu slaughtered the fiercest hen dragon. After it was roasted, the hen dragons finally knew their place and didn't dare to be impudent. There were no other people in the village, which meant that Apothecary hadn't yet returned. Qin Mu left behind a note to let everyone who returned to know to head to Granny Sai's manor for New Year's before continuing on his journey. In the majestic secret waters pass, the army looked at millions of people closing in on them. There were only tens of thousands of soldiers guarding the city, so when had they ever seen such a spectacle before? Luckily, Ling Yuxia walked over and explained their intentions. Only then did the general guarding the city open the city gate and let them in. The amount of food required for so many people was a problem. Heavenly Feather clansmen were vegetarians, so they didn't eat meat or fish. On the journey, they only ate some fruits, honey, and the rhizomes of flowers, living on little. Even so, the food consumed by millions of people was still a huge problem. Qin Mu asked Yu Jiaoqing about the fruits that Heavenly Feather clan ate from the pill trees in Heavenly Feather World. Those fruits were spirit pills, but they were rich in moisture, looking sparkling and transparent like crystals. At the same time, they had the benefits of spirit pills, allowing them to have no need for food or drink after a single one. Eating normal fruits could also satisfy their hunger. It was just that the taste wasn't as good. Pill trees. There are no plants that could bear spirit pills in Great Ruins or Eternal Peace Empire. Qin Mu asked about the effect of the fruits bore by the pill tree, and Yu Jiaoqing explained it to him in detail. Qin Mu then tried to refine such a spirit pill a few times, but she would shake her head every time he did. Finally, Qin Mu refined a furnace of pills the color of sky heavy with rainwater. He had spent quite a great deal of effort on it. After Yu Jiaoqing tasted it, she praised, "The taste is already 50 to 60% there." Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief and imparted the recipe to Yu Jiaoqing so she could find the apothecaries of their Heavenly Feather clan to refine the pills themselves. That way, they wouldn't have to pluck wild fruits from all around to eat. These Heavenly Feather clansmen are only suited to live in the south where it's warm. That place is the only one suitable. Qin Mu was getting a headache while thinking about where to settle so many people. In the end, he decided to hand this headache over to Emperor Yangfeng and have his head ache. A flying ship in secret waters pass rose into the air and brought Qin Mu's memorial to the capital city at a lightning-fast speed. In the meantime, Qin Mu summoned Dragon Rearing Sovereign, who revealed his true form to carry the millions of people on his humongous body. It was truly a spectacular sight to behold. Yang Jingjing clicked her tongue in wonder. She had never seen such a huge life form like Dragon Rearing Sovereign in Sunwell, so she couldn't help being curious. When they came to the south of Relax Prefecture, Qin Mu asked Heavenly Feather clansmen to station themselves in the forest nearby. He brought the girls to Granny Sai's manor, and Yu Jiaoqing also followed him here as they waited for Emperor Yanfeng's decree. Everyone who came to Granny Sai's manor couldn't help being astonished. The place was like a sacred ground in the mortal realm, like a paradise. The spirit chi and energy were so dense that they almost formed droplets of water. The place was also abnormally bustling as numerous palace maids hurried here and there to clean this and that up. Ling Yuxia was astonished and called two of them over. "Jian Qi, Qin Qi, aren't the both of you supposed to serve Empress Dowager? Why are you here?" The palace maids were none other than the two girls who had once escorted Qin Mu to prevent him from being assassinated by Little Poison King Fu Yuanqing. They immediately greeted her and Qin Mu. Each of them had a dimple on one side of their faces, one on the left and one on the right, complementing each other well. Jian Qi smiled and said, "Empress Dowager is here, so we are naturally here as well." Ling Yuxia was astonished. "Empress Dowager is also here?" Why is she here? Jian Qi and Qin Qi looked at each other and revealed troubled looks. Qin Qi hesitated for a moment before saying, she chased Playboy Yu to this place. Princess, hush, or else Empress Dowager will take our heads off if she learns about this. Jian Qi whispered closely beside Ling Yuxiu's ear, there are many women chasing after Playboy Yu, so when he revealed his true face, they were all shocked to see that it had been carved off. However, none of them left. These women are all very fierce and famous in the martial world. Some of them are even sect leaders. In the end, Empress Dowager couldn't take it anymore and fought fiercely with all of them, but she still couldn't suppress them, so they ended up all staying here. Ling Yuxiu looked troubled as she shifted her gaze to Qin Mu. Is Playboy Yu part of the village? His grandpa apothecary, also known as Jade Face Poison King. Qin Mu was greatly delighted by the news. In that case, Grandpa Apothecary must also be here. He got cornered by all the women and can't run. Yang Jingjing looked around and, besides the palace maids that were coming to and fro, she saw some weird life forms all around. One was a fierce merman with a human head and a fish's body, while another was a terrifying merman with fish's head and human body. They were all hurrying to and fro in the manor, preparing for New Year's. There were also tree demons, flower demons, as well as strange demons that filled the mountains and wilderness. The tree demons had heads full of branches that held few leaves. Their temper was violent and they would fight with deer demons frequently. Rascal, you brought so many maidens back for New Year's. Just as they were looking around, a fragrance assaulted their nostrils, and everyone looked toward the source of the voice. They couldn't help being stunned when they saw a beautiful woman walking over. She didn't look like a person from the mortal realm, but instead like she had come out from legends. She had a divine beauty, one without any flaw. The girls were all stunned, feeling their inferiority. However, they couldn't help feeling adoration and wanting to get close to her. Aunt. Sai Yunxiang went forward and said excitedly, "You're also here." Granny Sai chuckled and said, "Lassie Xiong, stay further away from my Mua. We are family, so how could Aunt take his side?" Sai Yunxiang retorted angrily with a black face. Granny Sai threw her to the side and walked toward the other girls. She examined them and smiled. "I've raised Mua up and I'm much closer to him than you. Lassie Xiong, I had never carried you. Mua, she is a vixen and full of naughty thoughts, so you need to be careful with her." Hu Linga jumped up and shouted, "I knew she's a vixen. Granny, I have looked after young master properly and didn't give any chance for all the little vixen to get close to him." Granny Sai came to Qin Mu's side and raised her hand, about to caress his head, but then couldn't help scolding angrily, "You've grown taller. Why aren't you bending down?" Qin Mu immediately bent down and Granny Sai caressed his head while sighing. "Your height has almost caught up to that of Butcher. How did you grow so fast, to even know how to flirt around and bring girls back to see me?" Her eyes grew red, about to fill with tears. "Just a year or two away from home and you're already starting your family." "Granny, I'm not starting my family, it's Grandpa Blind who forced me to." "You have met Yuxiu, and this is the Sun Guardian of the Sun Herders, the one who drove Sunship to chase off Imperial Preceptor. She's called Yang Jingjing. This is the chief of Heavenly Feather Clan from Heavenly Feather World, Yu Jiaoqing. I said I'm coming over for New Year's, and they all decided to follow." Granny Sai's tears turned into laughter, and she said, "It's good that these maidens are here to meet their in-laws. Quick, come in and have a seat." The girls' faces were all red. Yu Jiaoqing, however, was the chief of a clan and her cultivation was powerful. She was a top existence in Heavenly Feather World, so she said, "Senior sister, please don't be mistaken, I'm not one of His Highness's concubine." Granny Sai felt fonder and fonder as she looked at her pure and attractive appearance, which made her smile. "Calling me Granny will do. There's no need for senior sister, it's too polite." Yu Jiaoqing hesitated for a moment. Since she didn't yet fully grasp how people addressed each other in this world, she could only call her Granny. "I?" Granny Sai gave a sweet acknowledgement, overjoyed. Sai Yunxiang came forward and said, "Granny." Granny Sai immediately put on a straight face. "Call me Aunt." Sai Yinxiang felt extremely wronged and could only lower her head to call her aunt. Granny Sai then brought them to her palace and ousted Qin Mu while saying, "Go to the halls nearby to find Cripple. That old fellow suffered losses and is now crying miserably." "Which hall?" Qin Mu immediately asked. "The layout here is the same as in the village, so he's in his house." Qin Mu immediately went out to search, and Granny Sai turned to the girls, growing happier and happier. She said to Yang Jingjing, "Sun Guardian is a little thin, you need to eat more. Yu Xiu's body is pretty sturdy, very firm, though. I've met your father before, but I didn't talk to him. When will you be inviting the in-laws over?" Qin Mu found Cripple's hall and saw that blind, mute, deaf, and butcher were all there. There was also 2 village chiefs. He then noticed that it wasn't exactly right to say that. On one of the recliners was the limbless village chief, while the other one held Cripple who had no legs. Qin Mu immediately rushed forward and cried out, "Grandpa Cripple, this is..." Cripple's face was full of tears as he complained, "Mua, you're back. Your grandpa Cripple has fallen." Qin Mu composed himself and looked around, silently inquiring others about what happened. "The person who dug out my eyes reappeared and took Cripple's divine legs. Mute already went to Great Thunderclap Monastery to tell Old Ma to be careful. That person will most likely find him for his divine fists." Qin Mu's heart shook, and he took in a deep breath before asking solemnly, "Village chief, who is that person?" Before village chief could even answer, Apothecary, who had a tall and sturdy figure, walked in and said, "When I was running for my life, I met Daoistling Jing, and he said there was a godlike existence chasing after his life, wanting to take away his divine blood, so he had pleaded me to change his divine blood to protect his life. I asked Daoistling Jing about that person, and he said that he was in existence on par with village chief back then, and he called himself God." Village chief let out a shaky breath and said, "His name is only a single word, and his surname is very weird, Xing. He's a very egotistical person. But according to logic, his age should be around the same as mine, so his lifespan should be ending in 2 years. Yet Daoistling Jing said he looked very young, just like a youngster." Worried entered Apothecary's face and he said, "With your understanding of him, will he find Old Ma? Old Ma is Rulai now, the 4 elements are vanity, so he won't come for New Year's and will be in danger staying alone in Mount Meru." Qin Mu couldn't resist asking, "This person that's called Xingen, is he really that strong? To be able to fight his way into Great Thunderclap Monastery? I've no idea how strong he is now. However, I know that a person can spend all their energy into cultivating one part of their body to the god realm. That way, they can be a match for the fake gods. If one cultivated all their parts to the god realm, they would not be far from becoming a real god. So he will definitely go to find Old Ma," village chief said. This video will end here.